This is my pal Socks. Socks and I have had a busy day on the town, and we're both feeling pretty tired. Luckily for us, though, you can find vending machines like this one around just about every corner, stocked full of refreshing and, depending on your regional currency, sometimes mildly overpriced beverages. Much better. It's always been fascinating to me just how many human-intended foods we can feed our Pokemon without any negative repercussions. Socks here might look mostly like a cat, but don't go giving your cat soda pop or else you're both in for a bad time. Ice cream, cookies, chocolates, instant noodles, canned beans, nondescript geometry, ketchup, wasabi, tofu, pasta, hamburger meat, all delectable and appreciated offerings for any of your feisty friends. And I mean any of them. Not only do your Pokemon suffer no consequences from eating this stuff, but more importantly, there are even benefits. Are we sure this stuff's even actually made for human consumption? I mean, what equates to 50 HP for a Pokemon equates to gas and potential heart disease for me. I wonder what else these things could eat. I mean, at this rate, probably anything, but what could they gain from it? If Soda does this, what could a Pokemon gain from other good in moderation foods? What about the oldest one in human history? Beer. Don't fact check me on that. I didn't type oldest foods into Google. I just typed how old is beer. I'm probably wrong. But we aren't here to find that out anyway. We're here to find out how much HP a beer would restore if you gave it to your Pokemon. Yay, title. So first off, ground rules. Everything I say here is going to be based solely on observation of patterns and connection. Very base level scientific method stuff, like specifically 7th grade level. Nothing presented is going to have any basis in known medical science because, as we already established, drinking 14 cans of soda would give a Pokemon 700 points of HP restoration, while doing the same would simply give me induced vomiting. We have zero evidence that any of our known medical science applies to a Zigzagoon, and even more evidence to suggest that it doesn't. So, with that out of the way, how do we figure out how much healing a beer would offer? Well, to start, we'll need to look at the beverages already present as healing items in the Pokemon games: Fresh Water, Soda Pop, and Lemonade. For the first 6 generations, they healed 50, 60, and 80 HP respectively. From Generation 7 onward, they were changed to heal 30, 50, and 70 HP. We'll be using the Gen 7 and on numbers for our purposes for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's more modern and thus feels like a more accurate representation of the games, and second, well, it's easy increments of 20 HP as you go down the line. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, though. Why do the healing effects of these beverages even matter? While we don't necessarily have any concrete evidence that these beverages are the same as our real-world counterparts, for the purpose of our kinda silly question, we're gonna assume Pokemon Soda Pop consists of similar ingredients as real-world 3D, touchable, drinkable, purchasable Soda Pop. By doing this for Fresh Water and Lemonade as well, we can identify any trends in the ingredients to potentially determine where exactly the extra healing is coming from. We can then cross-reference our findings with the ingredients present in beer to see if we can find any similarities, and from there, hopefully be able to calculate the healing potency of a nice cold one. Thankfully for our purposes, the games already give us the perfect starting point. Fresh Water not only possesses the lowest healing value, but is in itself also an ingredient in quite literally every beverage you will ever drink. Or should drink. Well, no, actually, I'm pretty sure it's present in the stuff you shouldn't ingest, too. Just about any liquid's gonna have water in it. The in-game item description states that it is water with high mineral content, and wouldn't you know it, most drinking water also has mineral content. Now, look. Obviously, I can't say for certain that all water is going to have mineral content, and although I may not exactly be a historian, I'm fairly confident that most water that's been consumed by most humans throughout most of time has had some mineral content. So with all this in mind, I think we can safely use water as our baseline. Water equals 30 HP. Now we can move up the line to Soda Pop. Soda as we know it has 2 main ingredients: carbonated water and some sort of flavored syrup. Carbonated water is exactly what it sounds like: water with carbon dioxide shoved into it. The process is a little more complicated than that, but that's more or less all we gotta know for our purposes. Mostly because this is the only one of the 3 drinks of our sample selection that has carbonation in it, so it'd be a bit difficult to draw any meaningful comparisons, also because I don't want to explain the intricacies of adding carbon dioxide to water. So we have water, we have a sweetener. If water's worth 30 HP and soda is 50, we can make the argument that the sweetener is worth 20. Easy. Finally, let's talk about lemonade. If you've ever made your own lemonade, you know that the ingredient list is about as simple as how we just described soda. You take water, you take lemons, typically you'll add some kind of sweetener to that, and wowie zowie, you got lemonade. So if we know that water is 30 HP, and a sweetener is 20 HP, then we can also argue that the lemon adds another even 20 HP. That was shockingly simple. Surely beer will follow this formula and fit squarely into my hypothesis, lest it risk pulling the veil on my methodology and shining a light on how shoddy and weightless all of my arguments until now have been, thus putting into question the validity of this video's entire premise. Okay, look, before we go any further, I'm just gonna level with you. Most people I see make fun and hyper niche little videos like this usually do so because they're combining their educated background with their passion hobby. They come from a place of expertise and offer you a guided hand into a world you know little to nothing about. So what do I offer? What background do I have to help shed light on the topic of restorative RPG beverages? Am I a chemist? Maybe a molecular biologist? Even just a part-time home brewer? I have a theater degree, and I don't even like beer. I say all of this with the intent of not just being honest, but also, and primarily, to absolve myself of any guilt. If you are still watching and you continue to watch and take any of what I'm saying seriously, you can't say I didn't warn you. Oh, who am I kidding? Surely you didn't click this video expecting an expert take, right? You didn't, did you? You know what? Let's just talk about beer. Beer is ultimately comprised of 3 main non-water ingredients, each of which are incorporated at different stages in the brewing process. You start with a grain called barley, and you throw it in water to activate sugar-producing enzymes. You then take it out of the water and heat dry it before the sugars can be eaten by the barley sprouts. Now you have what is called malted barley, which you then put back into water to create a liquid called wort, which is different from the water you initially put in because the barley in this water is malted. You then boil your wort to sterilize it, and while doing that, you add the second ingredient known as hops, which is the flower of the Humulus lupulus plant and is full of acids and essential oils to add flavor and scent to the beer. And once the boiling is done, you then throw in the final ingredient, yeast, which is a little fungus, like really little microscopic. They love sugar, and when they eat it, they produce alcohol, thus fermenting our wort and leaving us finally with beer. I know, that was easy, that made sense. You're right, but learning about beer was never the issue. Let's just recap real quick, you'll see soon enough. We determined that the water in fresh water was worth 30 points of healing. We then add sweetener to it in soda pop for another 20 points. Finally, we take the water and the sweetener and add lemon for another 20 points. Water, as we went over, is in every beverage, so just ignore that. The upward trend lies in the sweetener and the lemon. And what, dear viewer, does a sweetener have in common with a lemon? Sugar. Do you remember then where the sugar content in beer is? Or rather, where it was? They love sugar, and when they eat it, they produce alcohol. When they eat it, it's gone. There is no sugar, which means, as it stands, I have no actual way of telling you how much a beer would heal your Pokemon. Is what I would say if I was willing to give up, but I'm not. I don't want to be the kind of person that offers you an answer to a question and leaves you cold and confused. At least not today, I don't want to be that kind of person. Tomorrow's a whole new day full of whole new possibilities, but don't worry about that right now. I know it may feel like we've been driving around a middle American suburban nightmare land hopelessly lost for 40 minutes with nothing to show for it save for a 3/4 empty tank of gas and a sun that's all but set in the sky, taking our hopes of ever reaching enlightenment with it. But to that I say one thing, dear viewer. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. We may not have an answer, but we have learned something supremely important. Our basis for comparison has been flawed beyond use this entire time. Clearly, what we need to do is go back to square one, find a new way to analyze and compare these drinks using an entirely different frame of reference. Like I said though, we've learned something. Beverages are just water with different things thrown into them. We tried looking to our real world for these things, but maybe that's where we went wrong. Maybe instead of applying our ingredients to the game's drinks, we could work backwards. If we were to make lemonade using only produce available to us in the world of Pokemon, how would we make it? I think it's time to talk about berries. If you don't know, berries are fruits that can be found and sometimes even hand-grown within the Pokemon games. There are currently 68 known species of berries, and they have various effects from healing specific status afflictions to healing HP, boosting a stat, or even making certain types of moves less powerful. There are some berries that have negative effects too, such as lowering a Pokemon's stats. Imagine your legs getting weaker every time you ate a tomato, that's basically what's going on here. Point is, there's a berry for just about everything, and conveniently for us, they're all based at least loosely on real-world fruits. A Leppa berry is meant to resemble an apple, a Pecha berry a peach, a Nanab berry a banana, and so on. If we can find which berry is likely used to make lemonade, we can substitute our lemon for that, see how the 20 HP value compares to the berry's effect, and potentially use that to calculate the healing value of a beer using the same logic. So let's start by finding our lemon. There's really only two potential candidates, the normal berry and the citrus berry. The normal berry is quite literally a lemon, but it has absolutely no use in battle and is just a cooking ingredient, and anything you can cook with it does not heal any HP, so it seems far-fetched that it would be the key ingredient in a restorative beverage. The citrus berry, however, is a much different story. It heals a Pokemon for 25% of their max health anytime they fall below 50% if they can hold the berry during battle. If used directly from the bag, it heals a flat 30 HP. It seems like the potency of the berry is increased if the user is already hurt and in combat. Maybe the active adrenaline moves the nutrients through the body faster or something, I don't know. What I do know is that this is the berry's natural state, and while mixing it into a beverage does seem to increase the overall efficacy of the HP restoration of the drink, it does also come at the cost of diluting the berry. If we use a citrus berry in place of a lemon for our lemonade calculation, we not only lose 10 of the 30 healing from the berry, but we also lose the increased healing during battle. Okay, that's workable. We can use that. Now we just have to find a berry that relates to a beer ingredient. I don't think barley is a fruit, and yeast certainly isn't, so the closest thing we got is hops. If I'm lucky, maybe there's a berry that has even the slightest passing resemblance to a hops flower, and I can just make up some... Oh. Huh. Yeah, so as of 2022 in Pokemon Legends Arceus exclusively, there exists the Hopo Berry, which, yes, is based on the very hops used in beer brewing. I genuinely did not remember this when I started working on this video, and I cannot tell you how happy I was to see this thing at the bottom of the Bulbapedia berry page. So what's this round little answer to all my problems do in game? Well, when used from the bag, it restores the power points of one move by 10, and when used in the field, it... Oh. Yeah, no, I'm not sure what I expected. The fact that the Hopo Berry itself can seemingly induce intoxication probably means Pokemon brewers wouldn't have to go through all of the hassle of malting barley and throwing yeast into it to ferment it, so I'd say we can assume Pokemon beer would only consist of water and Hopo Berries. Using what we know from our Lemonade Citrus Berry example, beer would then heal 30 HP from the water, plus 2/3 of the out-of-battle effect, with the in-battle effect not taken into account at all. Which means, based on this, beer as a healing item in a Pokemon game would restore 30 HP and 7 power points of one move, 6 if you round down. At least it wouldn't get them drunk? You know, because that's in battle effect. Okay, no, you know what? That's way too underwhelming. I did not spend over 12 hours of my life looking up beer facts and brewing science just to make a video where I waste time for 70% of it and then look at a Bulbapedia article to deduce that beer would give your Pokemon 7 power points back, and 7 only if we're being generous. What was that? What about it being about the journey and not the destination? I said that during the journey, while we were enjoying the journey, and now the journey is over and we're standing in the destination and it's 9 PM at a 7-Eleven that's been closed down for 6 years and doesn't have a drop of gas to put in our now empty tank of our dead car that's parked half a mile away in the middle of a suburban labyrinth of Daedalus. So yes, I'm not that hyped over the journey that led us here. I'm sorry. I need something to show for this. I need a better answer, and I'm gonna find one no matter what hyper niche scientific articles I have to read, and no matter what weird facts I have to learn. I will make this worth my time. It's time to talk about flavanols! Flava who's it what's now? Oh, I thought you might ask. There's a lot of definitions I could give you, but none of them matter. Don't worry about any of them. All we need to know is that flavanols are chemical compounds that are found in plants. Why do they matter? Well, because they have a very real and not made up correlation to HP restoration, of course. Remember when I said this video would have no basis in medical science? I lied. When we eat, we absorb the nutrients of the things we consume. We kinda literally take what makes that plant or animal work and just swipe that for ourselves. Now, I imagine that's more or less understood by everyone watching this, but what I'd guess is less understood is which nutrients do what. And it's gonna remain not understood because I'm not about to tell you that. I'm not qualified and it isn't relevant. But what is relevant and is still something I'm not qualified to talk about is the impact of flavanols. Flavanols have antioxidant properties, and if you're anything like me, you're a full-grown adult who doesn't know what that means because you have a performing arts degree. Antioxidants basically move through your body and find unstable molecules created during the metabolic process and stop them from causing any cell damage. As such, they're responsible for maintaining the body's repair, regeneration, and detox processes. Repair, regeneration, detox? Now, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm not, those are all healing type words. If lemonade is able to hear more than fresh water and soda pop, it's likely due to the presence of flavanols that the other two drinks lack because they don't have plants in them. But you know what does? Beer! Can you see where we're going with this? So what then are the primary flavanols present in lemons? Well, right off the bat, it's important to clarify that the highest concentration of flavanols are present in the stuff that surrounds the fruit rather than the fruit itself. We know that as the peel, but it's also called the albedo. We aren't usually eating that, but a lot of it does end up in lemon byproducts which are heavily used in the mass production of commercial lemonade. Within the albedo are such flavanols as hesperidin, areocitrin, ditamine, neuringin, neoareocitrin, neohesperidin, neorutin, areodictyol, neoringenin, diosmedin, diosmin, luteolin, vicinin, crisareol, apigenin, cinnacettin, quercetin, limocitrin, limocitrol, rutin, and camphorol. See, wasn't that easy? Gosh, look at how much we're learning! Oh, and do remember all of that for later, it's gonna be important. I'm not kidding. Neat, we're lemon experts. Now let's dig into hops. As mentioned when we were initially learning about this plant back when I thought I was making any semblance of scientific headway, the primary part of the hops plant used in brewing is the flower, which is loaded with all kinds of various acids, oils, and other plant compounds. Notable such compounds include but are not limited to catechin, epicatechin, parenthocyanidins, xanthohumol, isoxanthahumol, camphorol, ferulic acid, and quercetin. Now it may be worth noting for the sake of intellectual honesty that my source did specify that most traces of these chemicals found in hops are way too small to have any actual biological impact and that any potential impact they could have on the overall antioxidant efficacy of hops depends on so many variables that it can't really be replicated in real life. Lucky for us, we aren't talking about real life. We're talking about a fake drink in a non-real world to answer a made-up question posed from and subsequently answered by an altogether non-trustworthy source. So let's answer that question then, shall we? It's about time we finally found something to link the nutritional benefits of lemons to those of hops. We know they both have a tediously long list of flavanols, which are key players in regulating the body's overall restorative maintenance. So, dear viewer, do you remember which flavanols were present in both plants? I'll give you a hint. There was only one. I'll give you a minute to figure out which one it was. Okay, time's up. If you said camphorol, you were right! Camphorol is a flavanol that has been linked to the regulation of the body's cellular regeneration processes, both in the removal of dead or potentially harmful cells and in the creation of new blood vessels. And if you didn't know, when our body heals a wound, new blood vessels need to be created to repair and replace the ones that were destroyed. Camphorol, as it turns out, can help expedite this process. In simple and much shorter terms, it contributes to health restoration. I know. I'm about to base my entire argument off the presence of one chemical compound on a list of over 24. Not only that, but I specifically said that most traces of the chemicals found in hops were nowhere near plentiful enough to contribute to any notable health benefit. Yes, that is exactly what I said. Most. And most just so happens to not include camphorol, which is still detectable even in beer after the entire brewing process. It may not be detectable in particularly large quantities or really anything more than very low quantities, but it's still there. And as we already figured out, the hopa berry seems to be the key and potentially only non-water ingredient in our theoretical Pokemon beer. So, taking all of that into account, we can realistically argue that the presence of hops applies the same healing efficacy to a Pokemon beverage as lemons do to Pokemon lemonade, 20 additional HP. We don't have a sweetener, so the 20 from the hops combines with the 30 from the water to give us 50 with debatable amounts of power point restoration and or intoxication. You know? Putting that side by side with the hopa berry answer really doesn't make it look all that better, does it? And yet, I don't really feel as bad as I did about the hopa berry answer. Was it really actually about the journey this whole time? Like, okay, sure, we might have a little more gas left in the tank, but the 7-Eleven's still shuttered, the sun is long gone, there's still no signs of life within 5 miles, save for the maze of copy-pasted 3 to 4 bedroom homes, and Lord knows that leftover gas will only serve to get us parked dead in front of one of those houses' driveways with a coin flip's chance of getting the cops called on us. And yet, despite all of that, I feel better. Much better. I feel satisfied, my thirst for inane knowledge fully and utterly quenched. I don't think life's about the answers at all. I think it's just about having enough whimsy to ask the question and enough drive to see if it even has an answer. Huh. I set out to teach you about alcoholic beverages, and instead, I think we've both just learned something about what it means to be a human. Well, hey, I'm glad we did this. Thanks for coming down this rabbit hole with me. That ended up being a little longer than I thought it'd be, but if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I had a lot of fun with this, a lot more fun than I thought I would have, and I already have more in the works. So if you liked whatever you want to call this, subscribe, because there's more on the way. Okay, thanks. Bye!